Hello, my happies. Hello, my happies. Hello, my happy friends. How you doing, happy innovators? How you doing this week, huh? Things going well? Are you getting all of your work done? You know, I'm sitting here with my cup of coffee really early in the morning, take a sip. And you know what? I gotta tell you, even though I just woke up very early, and I kind of went to bed a little bit too late. I am exhausted. I'm tired. I could fall asleep right now, but can't do that. But I want to, and I certainly could right now. But it brings me to this idea that I've been thinking about lately. The idea of sleep and how important it is to our happiness and our health, even. You know what I'm talking about. I mean, that's what the weekends are for, right? To catch up on your sleep. And it's like we live in a culture where, I'm sure it's the same all over the world, where, people just are forced, really, into a lifestyle where they don't get enough sleep. And, you have all these scientists and stuff talking about it, the importance of sleep and how it's actually medicine for your body. We really require 8 hours or 6 hours of sleep every night. And, sleep is kind of like a mysterious thing, isn't it? I mean, what is that all about? We go into this zone every day where we kind of shut down, our bodies shut down, and our brain is still active and everything, but our body requires this downtime. This computer, this machine that is our brain, requires this rest period, And I've kind of found, just, by living a life, that most of the people I know and interact with or whatever are probably sleep deprived. They're not getting enough rest. And my wife and I just recently stumbled across this video on YouTube, once again. And it was a documentary film about sleep. And they were talking about, the different aspects of sleep and the history of dreaming and recording dreams and all those things. And that's cool. That's interesting and fascinating and all that. But there was another part of this documentary where they showed these scientists that were doing an experiment with these little babies. And what they did was they had maybe 10 different babies. And we're talking not even toddlers. They were infants, very, very young. And of course, the families, the mothers and fathers were present for this experiment. And what they were doing was they would have an adult show this baby, show one of the babies a series of hand gestures, and they did the same hand gestures for every baby, and there were 10 of them, like I said, Now for 5 of the babies, they allowed them to fall asleep immediately after they were shown the hand gestures, and then for the other 5, they made them stay awake. And then they tried the test again to see if the babies could mimic what they were doing and if they could remember what they were shown, And the 5 babies that slept, that were able to sleep immediately after being given the hand signals, after learning them, they wound up retaining the knowledge and the hand gestures. They were able to repeat them better than the other 5 who were required to stay awake. And the conclusion was, I guess, of this experiment was that after we have taken in a lot of information, maybe throughout the course of a day, or maybe you have a job that's particularly technical and it requires you to process like large amounts of data. You will need to sleep in order to fully process all of that information. Okay? Like when our brains are really active throughout the day, we're required that sleep in order to kind of decompress and allow that information to be fully processed by our brains. Like our brain, as powerful as it is and as much information as it has and as much function as it has, requires that downtime. Now, when we don't get that downtime, you got to ask some serious questions like, well, one, does it have an effect on your health? And does it have an effect on your cognizance, right? I mean, I would imagine that it does. And according to these scientists in this documentary I watched, it's extremely important. Sleep is such a major and necessary thing. And the bottom line is none of us that are listening to this podcast right now, myself included, do not get enough sleep every day. Of course, I'm saying this as I'm drinking a large cup of coffee and I just woke up in the morning and I really, really just want to lay down and go to sleep. I didn't get enough sleep. I didn't get enough. I can tell. I'm half of myself right now. But anyway, that's food for thought now, isn't it? The importance of sleep. Oh man, if you have the opportunity, you should probably sleep as much as you possibly can. Get as much rest. Let your body, let your brain relax and do its thing, because that's amazing, isn't it? Like even after we fall asleep, we're not conscious, but our brain is still going, man. It's still doing something, It makes me kind of think about that whole artificial intelligence thing, the movement for AI and everything. They talk about how they're trying to, make a computer version of the human brain. Man, I don't know. I don't think it's ever going to happen. I mean, they might be able to make a computer that can process large amounts of data like that our brain couldn't or whatever, but they'll never make something as complicated as the human brain. I don't think so. So anyway, I wanted to share a little story with you that I think is kind of funny. It's not really important or anything. It's just, a funny little story. But a long time ago, man, probably about 10 years ago now, or even longer than that, my wife and I had decided we wanted to try our hand at gardening, So I went ahead and, sectioned off a piece of our property that was maybe 15 feet by 15 feet, like a little square, and I made a fence around it and everything because where we live, there's a lot of wild animals and stuff. And, you have to kind of put a fence up around your garden. Otherwise, it's not uncommon for like deer to be able to like jump into your garden and, clear it out and then jump out. So you have to kind of make a fence that's a little bit taller. And, we have all kinds of animals that come through. So, I put this fence up around our garden and we had our garden and everything was great. And we did it that way for maybe a couple of seasons, a couple of summers. We would grow vegetables like tomatoes, really great heirloom tomatoes, and carrots and corn. And what else did we grow? Scallions we grew, pumpkins. I mean, it was really a nice little setup. And we maybe had like 3 different varieties of tomatoes and stuff. And the property that we were gardening on had previously been a horse farm, if you can imagine that. So the soil that we were planting in was probably the most fertile soil we'll ever see in our lifetime. And this garden just kicked ass. I mean, it just had like, so much good food coming out and was generating so much good food. And it was like because the soil was robust and everything. And in typical, Mike Bostwick fashion, I decided, well, okay, we got a 15 by 15 garden right now. What if next summer I go ahead and make the garden bigger? Like, let's go bigger, So I did, I turned over all the soil. I, took the fence down that I had made and kind of amended it with this new, larger fence that I was making. So we went from a 15-foot by 15-foot patch to probably about, and I'm not kidding, 40 to 60 foot, okay? I went big, and, I paid attention to details like digging like a little trench around the perimeter of the fence and filling it with rocks and then covering that with dirt so that, rabbits couldn't dig under the fence and get into the garden, right? You follow me? So, it took me about 2 months to get this fence up and done and get it ready for summer and everything. And so I finished the fence, right? And this is why I'm bringing it up, because I think it's really funny to me, after spending months of, back-breaking, 90-degree days, digging this garden and getting the fence set and getting everything ready, right? I sit down on my porch, the work is done, have a big old tall glass of something cold to drink and just sit on the porch, admiring my work, and lo and behold, right in front of my eyes, this tiny, tiny little bunny rabbit hops up to the edge of the fence, kind of like sniffs a little bit, and then it just bops right through the fence, right into the garden. Like, I'm sitting there watching it. I just finished all this work, and sure enough, this little bunny goes bouncing into my garden. That's the story of my life, man. But I did remedy that problem immediately by just getting a little bit of chicken wire and running that along the very base of that fence that I had made, and we were all set. But isn't that funny? Like, I did all this work and due diligence and making sure I paid attention to all the details, trying to make it foolproof. And, I'm not even finished with it for an hour. And this little rabbit just bounces right in there. Hilarious. Anyway, not too long ago, my wife and I stumbled across this video of this man named Jordan Peterson. I've talked about him before. He's a really good speaker. He's kind of challenging a lot of different things, a lot of different ideas. And I know here in America, he's a very political or politicized character. But in my house, not so much. I don't really care about the politics. I care more about his insights. He's a very intelligent person and a clinical psychologist. You can Google him, look him up, or if you haven't heard of him already, he's on the top of the bestsellers list, and with his new book, and 12 Rules for Life. And it's just kind of like, he's kind of a guru for people nowadays in a way, like especially for younger people who are trying to kind of sort their lives out and kind of figure out which direction to take in their life, So we stumbled across this video by him, and we've watched many, many, many videos of his, and they're all worth watching, okay? But he was talking about this idea of encouragement, and it really got me to thinking about it a lot, basically what he was kind of saying was that most of the people that he meets that come up to him, and there are many, many people, that revere him as like a hero. He saved their lives. He changed their lives with his information and with his suggestions, He's a very intelligent, wise man, and people, wow, when they get a little taste of wisdom from somebody, they hold it real close because it's really hard to find, And he's one of those people, in my opinion. Anyway, he was saying that most of the people that he meets, like when he does a public speaking engagement or anything like any kind of book signings or anything, he feels that most of the people that he meets don't ever really get enough encouragement from the people that are around them. Now think about that. And it actually, while Jordan Peterson is explaining this to this person that he's talking to, that most of the people he meets have never gotten a lot of encouragement from other people in their lives, it brings tears to his eyes, because like his message is encouraging people, he wants to give them confidence and, help them kind of get their lives in order, because sometimes people need a little bit of help like that, myself included. It's necessary. It's a necessary thing, to get your life in order, right? Sometimes you need a little bit of encouragement. And I thought about that. Like, who in my life was encouraging me, Because, my wife asked me not too long ago. In fact, we were kind of asking each other, really, what motivates you to do what you're doing? I can speak for myself, okay? That ever since I was really young, when I say really young, I mean like 5 years old, I knew what I wanted to do with my life. I mean, I really did. I was single-minded ever since I was little. And, I knew I wanted to be a musician. That's what I wanted to do. It's what I could do. And my wife asked me kind of like, why did you choose that? And I had to think about it for a little while because, I wasn't quite sure. But I did think about it. And the conclusion I came to was this, that music was really the only thing in my life that when I did it, the response that I got from people was positive, Like, okay, it became very clear to me after watching people react to what I was doing when I was making music, in this case, drums, playing the drums. Whenever I played the drums, I got a reaction from people, right? And the reaction was one of like, wow, you're really good. Okay, so that was a form of encouragement, right? So maybe that's why I chose it, because it was the one thing I could do that nobody else could do. And it got me attention, right? And it got me, and that acknowledgement from my peers, my friends, was encouraging to me. Okay, like this is something I can do, right? And, as we thought about it and talked about it, my wife and I, I never really have ever had to be told, Mike, you need to like get busy and make music. Like it was just always something I did. I was self-motivated. And not just with music, I mean, with lots of things. But with music, I never had to be told, I never had to be forced to do it. It was just something I always did. And that's kind of strange, isn't it? Even as a little kid, like I didn't have to be prompted. It was just something I was drawn to and I did it, It's kind of a cool thing to think about. And, okay, so yeah, in the early days, when I first was figuring out that I could play music or make music, and the reaction I got from people was positive, well, that's good for like how I got started, but what made me keep going, for 40 years? Like, what is the motivation here, And to be honest with you, I don't really know. I don't really know. I don't. I like to make music, right? But, when I was younger, I have this memory, of this contest we had at my school. And it was a painting contest. And all the kids in my class, my art class at my school, would paint a picture, and then the teachers of the school would judge the paintings, and they would pick one that they thought was the strongest, and the one that was the strongest would win an award, okay? And the prize was, like, whoever won this painting contest, they would be able to take their parents, 3 tickets to Blossom Music Center to watch the Cleveland Orchestra perform at Blossom Music Center. And the painting they did, along with paintings from other schools in the area that had a similar contest, would be displayed on the property of Blossom Music Center for all of the people to see, okay? And of course the orchestra would be playing, and it included like a dinner and all this kind of stuff, right? So I just did a painting. That's all I did. I just did a painting. And I won. My painting won, And that was a form of encouragement, right? I guess I don't think about it too much anymore because I don't really consider myself like a really great painter, okay? Although I have a few pieces that I've worked on that I'm really proud of, and I have them in my house, and some of them I've sold. I actually did have a gallery opening once of my paintings, and I sold some. But I never really regarded myself as like a painter. But after talking to my wife about this and, watching this Jordan Peterson thing, I kind of got to thinking, maybe I am. Maybe I am a painter. Maybe I should be devoting more time to it. And, now that I'm thinking about it, actually, a few years back, I had the idea of kind of like, not just painting, okay, but taking, like trash, like the recyclable stuff and things like old computer parts and stuff like that I had laying around. And, I started to generate like 3-dimensional art, almost like sculptures, I guess, out of these pieces of garbage, and I have a few of those too, It's kind of a fun experiment, like taking, plastic bottles and different forms of plastics and melting them with a heating gun and pulling them like taffy, and stretching it and making it bubble and burning it and, kind of sculpting it with heat, like onto like a piece of wood or something, and making these 3-dimensional pieces, And then I also, now that I'm thinking about it, I started to experiment with casting, like casting my face, casting my hands in plaster, and, making like art out of these castings that I made. So I got a few of those kicking around too. So it's not really just painting, I guess, that I'm talking about. It's more just, art. And, music is a form of art, but it's not quite the same as making something that's visual, So maybe it's time for me to get into that, It's usually kind of like a winter thing, I guess. My wife always says that to me anyway. Like when the snow starts to fly, she'll go, "Oh, it's time for you to do your painting. It's painting season, But the more I think about it, the more I think I might get into it again, like now. I might do it now, Kind of got the itch a little bit, but like, I have so much stuff that I'm doing and so much stuff that needs to get done. Like I can't get enough of it done in a day. So I don't know, maybe that's why, it's easier for me to kind of set that kind of artistic thing aside, and focus on the tasks at hand. But I don't know, maybe there's some value in that. I have to kind of think about that a little bit more, Maybe you're the same way, maybe you do things that are creative and it's done like in seasons, or you have a certain time or a certain environment you need to be in. And oh my gosh, isn't that the most important thing, is your environment when you're a creative person and you're making things like music or art or anything like that. At least as far as I'm concerned, the environment is everything, You have to have the right mood and the right feeling and the right lighting and the right room and the right motivation, and apparently, the right encouragement, and, actually now that I'm thinking about it, when I was, when my wife asked me, like, what motivates you to keep doing all this stuff you're doing? Like, why are you drawn to this? Why do you gravitate towards the music all the time? I mean, it's even like, when I'm supposed to be doing something else, I always make time to come into my studio and do something, no matter what's going on, no matter where I am. Even when I went to Las Vegas, I had to have something I was doing that would contribute to the work I was doing when I got back home. Like I was always doing something, always adding to it, always capitalizing on every opportunity, to have something to build off of or use somehow to pull into the music. That's something that's kind of like a realization I came to a long time ago, and I've talked to my wife about it a lot, and it's like almost like a compulsion, like everything I see, everything that comes into my sphere, I evaluate it like, how can I use this with what I'm doing? Like, how can I pull this into the music somehow? I mean, it doesn't matter what it is. If we go to a restaurant, if we go to a movie, to have a conversation with someone, or anything. It's just my brain automatically goes, okay, how can I use this? How can I use this? What's it good for? And, most of the time it's not good for anything. So I just kind of like, forget about it. But, it's kind of like this compulsion to just, like, it's so important to me, So everything I see, everything I do, somehow, how can I work this in? What can I use this for? What would it be good for? Like, I'll be walking through a store, a thrift store, and I'll be looking at everything and like, what can I use this for? Like, how can I make this into something for the robot videos that I make? Or how can I use this for something I'm recording or whatever? Like, it's my nature, kind of a fun thing to think about, I don't know. Is it the same for you? Is it the same for you? Is it, is your creative endeavor, whatever it is, you happy innovators, is it, is it something that's in the front of your mind at all times? Is it the center? Is your creative energy like the center of your existence, like it is for me? And man, I'm not even saying that like in a braggadocio way. It's just an acknowledgement of truth, that it's my existence, Oh, what a strange life, the life of a musician. It's one of those things, like, people will talk about it, and over the years I've had many conversations with people about it, and most of the people that I talk to are not musicians, they're not creative, they're not doing anything like that. So there's this tendency to think that the grass is like greener on my side of the fence, like what a life I have, and all that. But what they don't realize is that a lot of the time I admire what they're doing, and I tend to think that the grass is greener on their side of the fence. It's a strange thing. But things are tough all over. It doesn't matter what you're doing or who you are or whatever. Life is hard, and it's supposed to be, and good things come from hard work and struggle and sacrifice, right? These are all the precepts of Jordan Peterson, by the way. This idea of sacrifice, because you can't have it all. You can't have it all. Actually, that kind of reminds me. Okay, one more story I'll tell you. Oh, this is funny. My wife and I were watching this film about squirrels, because my wife and like her friends, okay, they do this thing where they'll be in a conversation with someone, right? And if somebody gets like distracted from the conversation, they'll say, a squirrel, like they'll make a joke, like they're being distracted by this squirrel off in the distance, So my wife and I, type into YouTube, squirrels, the life of squirrels or something. We just wanted to learn about them one night, just for the hell of it. And so we found this documentary film about squirrels, of course, because you can find anything on YouTube, right? Except for, dissent and, flat earth movement. You can find squirrels, but you can't find, certain political issues. This is the world we live in. So anyway, we're watching this documentary on squirrels, right? And they have this guy on the show, and he has a squirrel living in his house. Okay, so he's like a squirrel expert. He's a doctor. He's devoted his life to, the study of the behavior patterns of squirrels. And he has one in his house, and this thing's climbing around on him while he's being interviewed, And he's talking about, my friends come over. They're a little bit intimidated by this thing because it's running free in my house. Yeah, bad idea. But, I turn to my wife and I say, this guy's single, right? You realize he's not married, but he's got a squirrel running around in his house. And I said to her, which I thought was pretty funny, you can't have it both ways. You have to make a choice. You're either going to have a wife or you're going to have a squirrel. You can't have both. I suppose, it's not entirely true because in some ways, being a musician and devoting your life to music like I have, is kind of like having a squirrel in the house. Oh my gosh, it's true, isn't it? It's true. It's a form of a squirrel in my house. My wife and I always, make the joke, jokingly, at least I'm joking when I say it. We refer to my music career as like my spinning plates. She married this... She married a guy who spins plates. Oh, you gotta love that woman, man. She just puts up with so much stuff, over the years. Oh, she'll be able to write a book when it's all over, just the different things that, these different ideas that I've hatched over the years, like anything from, making songs to, 3D garbage sculptures. Casting my face in plaster. My wife is the one who actually helps me with this stuff. It's like Wallace and Gromit, we actually joke about that too. Like I'll refer to her as Gromit, like she's my compadre, like my, when I need help, making a plaster cast of my face. She gets recruited, see, that's love. Oh my gosh. Love that girl. Anyway, I suppose this is probably a good time to sign off right now and leave on a high note, where I'm laughing. But I'm sure if you're an artist, musician, or whatever, you've devoted your life to anything, architecture or, pouring concrete, whatever you've devoted your life to, your spouse has to kind of tolerate, certain kinds of things. I mean, can you imagine for my wife when I proposed this idea for robot costumes, and trust me, when I put these things on, it's like, oh my gosh, you poor girl, I'm aware, honey. I'm aware that this is very weird. Remember, you love me. You promised to love me. And she does. She does. She's a good helper. She's a good one. So, oh boy, I'm tired. I want to go to bed, but I can't. I got a lot of stuff to do today. Anyway, so until next time, folks, have a good weekend. Have a good week. Stay out of trouble. Don't work too hard. And try to get some sleep. Try to get enough sleep. And until next time, this is Mike Bostwick from Pipe Choir Records signing off. And remember, folks, if you want to keep what you've got to give it away. Take it easy.